It began as a small picnic grove for the employees of his chocolate factory. Milton Hershey's chocolate would become an American icon. And Hershey Park would become a popular summer mecca, charming millions of visitors and creating generations of sweet memories.
Hershey Park, Sweet Memories, was funded in part by a grant from Aetna U.S. Healthcare.
In the fall of 1995, Hershey Park began construction on a $5 million roller coaster named the Wildcat. Made of old-fashioned wood, the Wildcat was built to sound and feel like the roller coasters we remember, to be a sort of living reminder of the past. Hershey Park is filled with memories. The Hershey Ballroom, where the dance floor was so crowded you could hardly breathe. The giant pool and its toboggan slide. The miniature electric train circling the park. Who could forget the kiddie rides that seemed so thrilling? The magical carousel, or the Comet, king of the roller coasters.
I always consider myself very lucky to be a boy growing up in this town. I'd go to Hershey Park with a dime, and my dime was spent with a nickel for the carousel, and then the other nickel I had a Hershey bar.
Thank you, and enjoy your ride.
Hershey Park has evolved from the traditional amusement park of the past to the modern-day theme park. But there is still something special here, something sweet and inviting.
You could always depend on at some point in time throughout the course of the day that you would smell the chocolate cooking. When you were smelling the chocolate, you almost felt like you were eating it, kind of make your mouth water, but it really was the sweetest place on earth because, you really were smelling this stuff in the air. It's like, wow, this is amazing. When I first saw Chocolate Avenue, I was young and naive enough to believe that the lights were really made out of chocolate.
And now the soldiers are in uniform.
It all began with a kiss. Actually, the Hershey bar came first, but both were the creation of a failed businessman's son who had discovered Americans' weakness for chocolate. If you want to make money, Milton Hershey was advised by his father, you must do things in a large way. By 1905, Hershey had erected a massive chocolate factory in the heart of Pennsylvania farmland, surrounded by a company town for his employees. Along nearby Spring Creek, he planned a modest recreation area. His Mennonite mother, Fanny, thought the park to be wasteful and counseled against it. But Hershey was confident the park would be the perfect complement to his new town. On April 24, 1907, Hershey's Park opened for picnics, boating, and sports.
Mr. Hershey's main reason for building the park was simply for the recreation of his employees. Whether they worked in the department store or whether they worked in the chocolate factory, he wanted some place where the people could forget the work of the day and have a little fun.
The employees could come over during their lunch hours and just enjoy and relax in the park. That was one thing he wanted for his people, for his town, and for his factory employees. And that's why he built the original section so near the factory.
Until a small bandstand was built, the town's band performed concerts under the shade of the trees, entertaining the Sunday afternoon picnickers. A pavilion offered dancing and roller skating. Audiences packed the Park Theater to see vaudeville shows. Above the stage, a banner in gold letters read, "All ye who enter here leave dull care behind." Fanny Hershey had predicted the worst for the open-air facility, but later admitted, "I guess the Lord approves of your having a theater, because it didn't rain once all season while you were using it." A 12-mile-long trolley line connected Hershey with its neighboring towns. A one-way ticket cost just a nickel, attracting local crowds on the weekends. But Hershey saw greater opportunities for his park. He had lived in New York, Philadelphia, Chicago, big cities that all had celebrated parks, and he wanted his park to achieve similar recognition. Within 6 years of building his factory, the Hershey Bar had become a national sensation, and Hershey hit upon an ingenious advertising campaign. Inside the millions of chocolate bars sold every year, he began wrapping picture postcards of his town and park.
The Hershey residents enjoyed the park very much, and we're really proud of it. The park was really an important part of the community and the town, because we had trains come in here from the whole area within 100 miles.
Pulling as many as 15 to 20 passenger cars, trains delivered eager picnic goers to the station at the foot of Cocoa Avenue, directly across from the park entrance. In 1908, a local grocers association brought 5,000 people for a picnic at Hershey Park. The Harrisburg Patriot reported that about 1,500 persons went through the mammoth plant, and souvenirs of sweet chocolate and postcards were handed to each one. Picnics became big business, from Sunday school groups to large companies, even entire towns.
My town, Annville, did that. We just closed up the town of Annville and everybody went to Hershey. Hershey Park was the place to go.
Even Fanny was won over by the charms of the park, often walking along its paths and enjoying the atmosphere of the merry crowds. The park was a hit, but Hershey's business manager thought it could be even better. He suggested buying a second-hand carousel for $1,500. Hershey had doubts about the ride, but gave in. On its first day, the carousel made $87 at a nickel a ride. Hershey saw the light.
My favorite memory would have to be the carousel. I was 10 years old, and I pedaled my bicycle down there. It was a nickel a ride, plus a free ride if you got the gold ring. Usually I was able to get one, sometimes two of the brass rings to continue a ride on the merry-go-round. That was all a matter of luck.
Sticking out along the outside of the carousel was an arm, which held a series of rings that riders would try to grab as they went around. One of the rings was brass, and if you were lucky enough to get that ring, you won a free ride.
Boy, everybody tried to get on that front horse there so you can grab that ring and get the golden ring. Oh, half the time I missed. You know, we were young, we were short, and you couldn't reach out and grab that.
Now a devoted fan of the carousel, Mr. Hershey himself would sometimes be caught by local children riding the merry-go-round after the park was closed, remembered a resident. He would allow them to join him, unless they became unruly. Eager to expand on the success of the carousel, Hershey commissioned his next ride. When the miniature electric railway was completed in 1910, it was considered a technological marvel.
My father's name was Bill Brandt, and he drove the little train for about 35 to 40 years. My dad would never give me a free ride except when I brought his lunch. My dad was a company man who felt that he owes this to the company and should not give anyone a free ride. The engine was in the middle of the train. When I got to the end of the line, I had to change the seats. Every seat had to be turned so that people would be facing the front instead of riding backwards.
Oh, you could get on there and ride all around the park and see different things. You'd pick up people here and there. And it was just a pleasure ride, just to ride from one end of the park to the other.
The miniature train was Hershey Park's signature ride for more than 60 years, but it finally reached the end of the line in 1972.
The little train that my dad had driven was, well, I just never saw anything like it.
In the same year that the miniature electric railway began circling the park, Hershey opened a zoological garden. Hershey Park's newest spectacle captivated adults and children alike.
The easy grace of this big cat makes us realize the power behind that smooth motion. It's like the energy hidden in velvety chocolate.
The park's first zookeeper, Franz Zinner, had toured with wild animal shows and thrilled the crowds with a trained bear named Bob, who stood up on 2 feet and even gave him a kiss. By 1916, Hershey Zoo was the largest free private zoo in the country. Hershey Park continued to expand its collection of animals throughout the 1930s, but was forced to close the zoo during World War II due to a shortage of workers. Although the zoo would never return on the same scale as before, its new main attraction, a circular cage of monkeys, found its own way of entertaining the crowds.
We kept about 20 South American monkeys, and I went in there one day and I thought, oh, I forgot a certain kind of feed. So I walked out and I hung the lock in. I should have known better. One of the monkeys, Brownie, had taken the lock out and the door was open, and here were all these monkeys running around the zoo. Brownie ran across the bridge and I took out after him with a net. And that monkey stopped. And he looked up at me and I stopped. And it just looked like he was saying to me, I'm sorry. I'll never do this again. Please don't hurt me. And I couldn't. I put the net over him gently, put him in a crate, took him back to the zoo.
Not as hair-raising as the rides that surround it, the zoo appeals to the imagination, filling kids with wide-eyed wonderment. And Milton Hershey took great pleasure in the joy his park provided them. Although he and his wife Kitty did not have children of their own, they decided to commit their fortune to the welfare of children. In 1909, they founded the Hershey Industrial School for Orphan Boys, which would aid and uplift the lives of countless young men. Mr. Hershey loved to stop and talk to the boys, recalled alumni of the school. He was genuinely interested in what we did, and did it because he loved children. In 1923, for his town's 20th birthday, Hershey bought his first roller coaster. It was called the Joy Ride, and on its first day, its riders were quite joyous. The pleasure seekers almost swamped the ticket takers, wrote a local newspaper. It was necessary to dislodge a number of them with a crowbar in order to give others a chance to ride. Soon its name was changed to the Wildcat, but by the end of World War II, it seemed more like a pussycat compared with newer roller coasters. To keep up, Hershey built a bigger, faster coaster, the Comet.
The Comet at that time was as good as it got. That first hill was always the anticipation of going up to the top of that first hill. And when you go down, every so often I think, geez, you know, we're gonna go right through this thing and gonna land in the creek. I mean, there's no way that it's gonna go up. We're just gonna crash right through the bottom. We'd be holding on for dear life. Then it was a question of who had the guts to sit in the front. And we got to the point when the Comet, where we practically were standing up on that thing, backwards. That's how good we were with that, with our eyes closed, you know, blindfolded.
Despite being over 50 years old, the Comet is still ranked one of the top wooden coasters in the East.
All the way down the ramp. Thanks for riding Comet. Enjoy the rest of your day at Hershey Park.
We're Hershey Park happy and Hershey Park glad.
With the addition of Hershey Park's newest roller coaster, this Wildcat sets a new standard for an old favorite.
We call this a test run. What we do today is we have a dummy named Fred that has accelerometers mounted in his neck and in his chest and in his head. Fred basically tells us what a rider experiences when he goes around the track. Every time you go into a curve, you'll feel a load. Fred will tell us how high that load is.
On test day, the day I feel we're ready to rock and roll, I'll walk around the ride and give it a final inspection. Once I have established everything done, I will get a crew of guys to stand on different points, test points of the ride, tell me what's happening as the train goes around a track for the first time.
Bye, Fred.
Till the train goes around a track, I'm stressed out. Once it makes it around a track, it's a relief off everybody's shoulders. And it's like a new day. It's just like you're born that day.
Rocket ride, man. Rocket ride.
Liger. Such a great feeling inside, especially when you ride it for the first time.
If there was one thing that distinguished Hershey Park from any other park, it was the candy-coated aroma flowing from the nearby factory. And curious park visitors requested to see the source for themselves. Milton Hershey was the Henry Ford of chocolate, and he was only too happy to show off his state-of-the-art machinery that stirred, poured, wrapped, and packed. After years of informal visits, Hershey officially opened his factory doors to the public in 1927. By 1935, as many as 2,000 people a day lined up for the free tour. As the years went on, a trip to Hershey Park just wasn't complete without the free candy bar that you received after touring the factory. Although not considered a park attraction, the appeal of the factory tour relates to why the park has been able to survive over the years. Every Hershey's Kiss sold represented a potential rider on the roller coaster and added to the profits that were then invested back into the park.
There is a little tissue in each of these kisses, which will identify it to you as one of the Hershey Army.
Even during the Great Depression, people could still afford the sweet escape of a Hershey bar, and Hershey Park entered a period of massive development while 2/3 of the amusement parks throughout the country closed their gates. In 1929, Hershey Park kicked off the new season with a splash, opening the Mill Chute, the park's first water ride.
The old mill was lots of fun. And you get in boats and you went under a dark canopy of some kind, went up a hill and down in the water. Oh, boy.
Through the years, the old mill has been updated and even changed into a jungle adventure called Lost River. But whatever the theme, it was the plunge down the infamous chute at the end that put a smile on everyone's face. Now, a ride called the Coal Cracker captures the feel of the traditional chute ride. Bringing back memories of earlier days. Bruce McKinney first visited the park as a student at the Hershey School for Orphan Boys. He eventually went to work for the park. Now, he's its president.
I think my favorite ride, along with other students of the school, was the old bug. We used to go on that time and time again and never tired of it. We really created a ride out of a ride because as the bug was spinning, we would spin in our seats and move around. I'm not sure it was really something we were supposed to do, but we created that unto ourselves. Our objective was to get to the park as quickly as we could on the weekends when we didn't have to work, and we used it for a lot of things. We enjoyed the rides and the fact that it was an all-boys school. We literally set our objectives on chasing as many girls as we could, too.
That's what we liked. We could see the fellas. We used to meet a lot of Milton Hershey boys. We didn't have much money then. Maybe 5 cents or 10 cents to get on something. And it was just fun to go there and watch everybody ride and everything.
I don't think you've ever seen many young couples riding without holding on to each other. That was the main reason for riding a Wildcat. You got a good hold on things. Yeah.
With the Bug and other new rides, Hershey Park's quiet valley began to echo with the carnival atmosphere of the Midway. But in an area all to its own, a collection of gentler rides was also growing. Beginning in 1926 with the Kiddie Ferris wheel and a small airplane swing, the rides in Hershey Park's Kiddie Land haven't changed much over the years. Since it opened in 1935, the Kiddie Turnpike has been a favorite because you could really drive a car, just like a grown-up. The pony ride took fantasy a step further. On a pony, you were Roy Rogers or Dale Evans, even if you were just being led around a track. Hershey Park used to have a Kiddies Week when children could ride for free. A highlight was the Baby Parade, a combination beauty pageant and costume contest that began in the 1930s and ran for 40 years.
I know I was in the Baby Parade probably from the time I was a year old until I was 10 or 11 years old. My mother entered us every year. We were never entered in the prettiest baby or the cutest baby contest. My mother always had us dressed in some kind of costume. I remember a picture of my sister sitting in a basket. She was advertising all kinds of Hershey products, and I think it said Hershey's for Health or something like that. I think they were more fun for my mother than they were for us.
They had about 100 to 150 contestants. And they had winners for the best costume and the best float. Of course, the cutest baby was the big prize. Every mother thought their baby was the cutest, of course. So that meant 149 mothers went home thinking the judges were pretty poor.
The growth during the 1930s extended beyond just rides. It included a sunken garden with a spectacular electric fountain that could shoot water 65 feet in the air, a ritzy remodeled ballroom for dancing, and a massive new pool.
I had some of my fondest memories of Hershey Pool. The pool was 210 feet long, the pool proper, which in those days was an enormous pool. I learned to swim here. I came in here like 1935 and just paddled, played around, and I finally learned to swim. Oh, I used to dive off the high board. I was never a diver, I was a swimmer. But when you came over here with all the girls and everything, you like to show off. So I used to dive. On the other side of the dance hall, there's a thing called the toboggan slide. One time, a lady was coming down, and water's here and she's here, and she reared back on her sled and she hit the water, and her bathing suit split down the front. It's the first time I knew ladies were different than men.
Within its first 25 years of existence, the rustic picnic groves had grown into a major tourist attraction. In the summer of 1934, wrote a local newspaper, Hershey Park's grounds were assuming metropolitan proportions. Milton Hershey's dream of building a first-class park to rival any in the country was becoming a reality. But it was more than a business. He truly loved the park and stayed involved with it all his life.
My father was the manager of the park for many years, and Mr. Hershey came to the park office frequently. And it was in the years when he had private duty nurses around the clock. And he would come through the office into my dad's private office in the back. The nurse would be coming flying through, "Where's Mr. Hershey? Where's Mr. Hershey?" And by that time, George and Mr. Hershey were on their way down the back steps and out into the park. He was a very hard person to keep down.
Even the small details did not escape Mr. Hershey, who was not above picking up litter as he walked around his park. Unless it was a Hershey bar wrapper. Those he would leave on the ground, face up. Affectionately called MS by those who got to know him, Milton Hershey's presence in the park touched everyone.
My brother had the popcorn machine, and MS would come behind the counter there and eat popcorn with him. And he'd say, "Oh, I like this popcorn." And my brother was, of course, impressed that MS would be there eating popcorn, and people would come up to the counter and not know who this man was behind the counter.
When not walking around and inspecting the grounds, Milton Hershey often dined with other park visitors at the Hershey Park Cafe, which boasted an orchestra and could seat more than 1,000. In 1930, Mildred Fisher joined her older sister on the wait staff.
Once you were a waitress out on what we called the veranda, you got 25 cents an hour. That was pretty good. So you tried to get an 8-hour day and to at least get $2 if possible. And when Mr. Hershey came in, the whole kitchen just went into action. And he most always ordered chicken. And he would always order waffles served with chicken gravy. And then when he was finished with his meal, he didn't go back out through the cafeteria. He came in to the kitchen and congratulated all the people on the wonderful meal that they served him. He never forgot anybody. He was a great person. I really liked him.
But for Milton Hershey, no amusement in the park could compare to the pleasure of listening to the Sunday afternoon band concert. In the early days of the park, the musical options were fewer, with the only band being the newly formed Hershey Park Band. Members were drafted from the chocolate factory by Hershey himself, who expected workers to do several different jobs. Truck drivers were handed tubas. Chocolate mixers suddenly became clarinet players. Band members even had to run the refreshment stand the first season Hershey Park was open.
And they attempted then of saying, "Wait a second, I don't play an instrument." He said, "That'll be all right." Unfortunately, the band for the first 4 years, the music was not too good.
With practice, the Hershey Band became one of the best in the area. As the park grew in popularity, other bands were brought in to entertain the crowds. In the 1940s, people flocked to the band shell to see local favorites like Reg Kehoe and his Marimba Queens. But the biggest bands played at another spot in the park. In the evening, couples would stroll through the sunken garden, past the glittering electric fountain. There, they'd hear music floating on the summer breeze from the nearby Hershey Ballroom.
The floors were just polished like glass. It was just a romantic, glamorous place.
I went stag, and she went stag with her girlfriend. The
funny part about it was that she had borrowed her girlfriend's dress. And when I saw her, one of the first things I saw was, I loved the dress.
And then he came and asked me to dance, and I said I felt like Eliza Doolittle. I could have danced all night. I thought it was just wonderful. I think it was love at first sight. On my part, I don't know about his.
From the beautiful Hershey Park Starlight Ballroom in Hershey, Pennsylvania, Chocolatetown, USA, the CBS Radio...
They had a dance every Wednesday and every Saturday. Saturday for the best bands was $1.10. Benny Goodman, Guy Lombardo. We used a trite statement in the Army, the best bands of all moved to Carnegie Hall. Well, the best bands of all came to Hershey Park Ballroom. It was so crowded that only you could dance in the corners of the ballroom because the whole ballroom was just packed full of people.
The sides of the ballroom opened up, and it just became a big gazebo, and you could see the band, you could hear it real well. There was a big grassy knoll that you used to sit on to watch the bands. You used to see guys with their girls sitting under a bush looking at the fountain, and the colors would change on it at nighttime. You know, it'd have reds and blues, and like a rainbow, and it was beautiful.
It was romantic.
Yeah, I believe it was for me too. I think so.
I think I'm gonna cry.
I get to thinking about Hershey in those days, and I get all misty.
In 1944, Milton Hershey bought this carousel for his park's 40th anniversary. Built during World War I and adorned with American flags and Lady Liberty, it was the only new ride the park acquired during the Second World War, a time when a reduced workforce and declining attendance forced parts of the park to close. It would be the last ride Mr. Hershey would add to his park. In 1945, a month after turning 88, Milton Hershey died.
Everything he did was in the idea of doing things for the people who made him a success. I think that was his philosophy of life.
On the day of his funeral, the town that bore his name and embodied his dreams came to a standstill. But on the next day, the 66 horses on the carousel started up again, gently taking its riders up and down and round and round. And Hershey Park would continue to grow, beyond even what its creator could imagine. With the prosperity of the 50s and Americans ready for fun, Hershey Park again became a favorite summer escape. Families returned to the park and its shaded picnic pavilions as they had been doing for the past 40 years.
Every town had their picnic, and they came as early as 4 or 5 in the morning to get their table. And the pavilion that was the most wanted was the one that was right next to the miniature railway, and they would have maybe 20, 30 tables. And that was the first pavilion that was filled up. And there was maybe at least 6, 7, 8 pavilions. And these were filled. In fact, if you didn't get there early, the chances are you didn't get a table. We had running games and bag races and three-legged races and things like that for the younger ones. For the older people, trying to determine how long's a minute, egg throwing. It was getting together as a town and doing something. That is something that just doesn't happen today, as we did in those days.
For most picnickers, the highlight of the day was spending the afternoon at the seashore at your door, Hershey Park's slogan for its famous pool. The pool was always a great place for young people to meet.
Not bad. In fact, he's cute. I hope he lets me introduce him to Mom and Dad. Oh my goodness. What did he say his name was? This must be my lucky day, meeting a nice boy from, of all places, my hometown.
When I was in high school, a group of us had gone down to Hershey Park, and we got on the rides, and we were taking our swimming trunks. Well, we went to the swimming pool, and they said, "I'm sorry, but you can't come into the pool." And we sort of understood why, but didn't specifically ask. And we had just formed a youth council of the National Association of Colored People. So after we had gone there, we came back, we wrote letters, we demanded that we be treated equally. And then a couple weeks later, we went back and were accepted. After we got there, we were swimming, and the other people in the pool didn't seem to mind at all. So that made us always think, so what's the big problem? We didn't contaminate the water. We didn't contaminate the people who were there. Everyone seemed to continue having a good time. Hershey Park is quite a wonderful place, and integrating the pool, that only made Hershey a better place for all people.
In 1960, Hershey Park opened its miniature turnpike ride. It had gas-powered cars, a toll gate entrance, and a tunnel that crossed Spring Creek twice.
The turnpike was the ride, because at that time, we were all chomping at the bit to drive. Everyone wants to drive a car. In fact, my cousin thought he was the best driver in the world, and I thought I was the best driver in the world. If you couldn't get in the turnpike, though, and you really wanted to drive, then you'd go over to the bumper cars and beat up on each other. It was really an adventure. It was really an adventure.
A ride that was equally jarring was the old fun house.
You go in through mazes and different things pop out at you. And then when you would get out on a big porch especially the women, they had air holes. And women would walk out there and there goes your skirt up.
There's a giant barrel you could walk through. There's a plate you could ride on. It would spin around and around, and you tried to push everyone else off and you didn't get pushed off. I remember they had some walking boards, I guess you would call them. They would walk back and forth. They had another place, and that was a walk-through where it was very, very dark, and you never knew what was going to come jumping out at you in that ride.
Laughland sounded innocent, but it was a ride that could scare the wits out of you.
There was people screaming all over that thing. I mean, grown-ups were in there screaming. Cars taking you around, and then all of a sudden something jumps out at you. I'm not scared. You scared. Sometimes you didn't even want to go in. One of my cousins, a little one, he was too afraid to even go in that ride. He didn't want to go in that ride.
If you had any qualms about going in the fun house, the mysterious laughing lady didn't help.
Laughing Sal, as I remember her, It was just a mannequin that would just rear back and laugh with a very hearty laugh.
For most of its history, Hershey was an open park. There was no admission fee, and families could spend a whole day just strolling around, maybe taking in a ride or two.
I enjoyed being able to walk through the park. I remember my father would give us $1 on a Sunday afternoon, and we could spend the whole afternoon at the park with that $1. If we wanted to ride, we rode. If we didn't, we just walked through the park.
I remember going to Hershey Park, and we had this freedom. We had all this space to run around, and we weren't on a curfew. So we just took off and went on about our business and having a good time all running through the park and enjoying the rides.
But while an open door was fun for visitors, it was a nightmare for park security. By the late 1960s, Hershey Park was facing a tough choice.
It had started to get a little bit run down. They weren't investing money into the park in terms of upgrading it, bringing in new rides. And they realized they had to do something. It was either improve the park or close the park.
Encouraged by the success of Disneyland and other big theme parks, Hershey Park decided to create a new master plan. In 1970, they approved a multi-million-dollar design to turn the park into a major entertainment complex.
In redeveloping the park, the first thing that they had to do was put a fence up all around the park. This, needless to say, was kind of upsetting to a lot of the townspeople who had grown up here with the park being an open space that they could walk in and out of at will.
Inside the fence, old landmarks like the bandshell were torn down to make way for the new.
Oh, I couldn't believe it.
I felt sad about it.
I couldn't believe
it. It was the end of an era.
Yeah.
I felt very sad about it.
As great as Hershey Park was in the late 60s and early 70s, it needed to change. It needed to have an infusion of new attractions, new rides, and new entertainment.
There they go, around the edge of the pool, right together. One more time.
We cleaned the park up, we put sweeperettes out, we created a one-price admission where people could come in and after they were inside the gate didn't have to pay for anything. We had to reestablish ourselves as a clean, family fun activity.
In May 1972, the new Hershey Park celebrated its grand opening.
How does everybody like this ride? Does anybody feel sick?
New rides, new entertainment, and the new look began to pay off. In 1973, the park reached a milestone, drawing more than 1 million visitors in 1 year. By the late 1970s, theme parks were popping up all over the East, each offering newer and bigger attractions. So in 1977, Hershey Park rolled out a revolutionary new roller coaster.
I was trying to figure out a good name for this new and exciting one-of-a-kind on the East Coast ride. And I had 2 names in mind, and I suggested both of them to my wife, Sally, and our 2 daughters, Kelly and Kate, and said one of them was Super Duper Looper, and my favorite, and I thought the one we ought to call it was the Mary Dairy Dip. Looking upon blank expressions of the second one, they said definitely Super Duper Looper. One of the requirements was for someone to take the first ride, and I was prepping my wife to be that person with me. She was not particularly enamored when she saw the ride, and in fact told me, as a mother of your children, I'm not going on that thing. I convinced her, however, to do it, and we got on. As we got through the first loop, she was screaming in my ear, but we made it until after the loop, and the car came to a sudden stop. And I told her to relax, that everything would be fine. It was a safe ride. It had been well engineered. One of the park maintenance people came walking up the catwalk and told us, "I'm sorry, Mrs. McKinney, Bruce, you're going to have to walk down the catwalk. But it did make the loop.
In the never-ending battle to be king of the thrills, Hershey Park again added to its collection of coasters.
It's not like any other ride. It goes frontwards, backwards, left, right, goes every which way, and I'm sort of a sucker for them kind of rides.
When the Sidewinder struck in 1990, it took the concept of controlled terror to a whole new level.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Hershey Park. I'm Franklin Shearer, the general manager of Hershey Park. And it's
After 8 months of construction and testing, the Wildcat opens to the public.
Which was named after Hershey Park's first wooden coaster, built in 1923 and replaced by the Comet in 1946. Unlike the Comet, however, this coaster is a cyclone coaster.
The Wildcat is fabulous. It's extreme. It's a wooden coaster that does everything that a wooden coaster is supposed to do, and doesn't do anything that a wooden coaster is not supposed to do. It doesn't beat you up. It's just a lot of fun. Good curves, good air time, floating right up off your seat. It's fabulous. You ought to come out and try it.
One word, fantastic.
Wildly popular, attracting a record-breaking crowd of over 2 million people its inaugural season, the Wildcat is the first ride of Midway America, the park's new nostalgic-themed area. Celebrating the boardwalk-style amusement parks of the past, Midway America embraces America's passion for those carefree days of summertime fun.
I think people love Hershey Park because it's a fun place to be. You can let your inhibitions run away and you can just enjoy yourself. You can let your hair down. You can do things that maybe you might not have done as a child, and you can just revert to that second childhood and do some things that you really would like to do, but maybe you don't want your friends to see you do it. But here, nobody cares. It's a fun place to be. You don't see very many people without smiles at Hershey Park.
From its simple beginnings as a rustic picnic and recreation area for the Hershey employees, to its current collection of spectacular rides, Hershey Park continues to embody the gentle and generous spirit of the man who created it.
Many of us owe more to Mr. Hershey than we can ever appreciate. He saw a need, and he had the means of helping. And that was his purpose in life, to use his money to the best advantage for the most people. I think Mr. Hershey would like the way the park has grown, and if people were enjoying it and doing them some good, he would like that very much.
At the end of the night, when we would have to go home, one of my cousins would get mad, and the other one would start to cry. Ah, Daddy, I don't want to leave, no, Dad, no, you know. And my other cousin, I hate you, Dad. Why are you always we're having fun, you know? And he'd get mad. He'd be really mad. You don't want to leave Hershey. I mean, you don't want to leave. And I mean, it was that way then. It's still that way now.